Good evening, everybody. My name's Gordy Gottlieb, and I'm with the Nanticoke Valley Historical Society, and we're pleased to do our second online presentation. And it's the author tonight is Phil Childs. The presentation is called "The Trip in Time from Endicott to Maine, Part 1." Phil is a retired teacher from Union Endicott Schools. He's lived in the town of Maine since 1982, and he's after having driven back and forth for many years, he became curious about the history of the route, Route 26, and so he's decided to devote, I'd say, several weeks of his life to, maybe more, to document the history and heritage of Route 26 from basically West Corners up to the hamlet of Maine. So again, we're recording tonight. If you miss this, or if anyone missed it, it'll be on our webpage at nanticokevalleyhistoricalsociety.com, and we'll also put it on Facebook. You know, if you don't catch portions of it, you can watch it there later. We'll also put the presentation itself on the website too. We have a presentations page, so we save all the documentation there. And tonight you're going to see an awful lot of detail, and we encourage you to go out to the website under the presentation page and look at some of the great presentations. And we've saved stuff from, there's several presentations out there, and we have more that we're pulling out of the archive, so we'll share those, and they're a good source of reference. And we appreciate your feedback on any. There's a contact page on the website too. There's also a place to join if you would like to become a member, and we always appreciate that. We could use the support. And then I also mentioned that we have another presentation coming up on, we believe, June 21st, and it's about the Baldwin family in the town of Maine. So we hope you'll tune into that, and we'll have more detail on our Facebook page and on the website. And we hope to keep building content, and we appreciate your attending this evening. So without further
just cliche. I'm here. I woke up. Thank you. The nap's over.
So I'm going to share the screen of the presentation now, and thanks for coming on tonight. And
there's a third member, by the way, of our group here right now. Her name is Lily. So if you hear the tail thumping occasionally, or if the doorbell rings, there might be a little chaos and confusion. So Gordy, if you would put the table of contents up.
Okay.
And I'll start off there.
Let me go to full screen mode here. Move some things around. Oops. Bear with me here, folks. Just a little bit of a logistics thing. Okay.
Okay, here we go.
All right.
So there's about 80 slides in this presentation, all of which, when you download it, will make a lot more sense. Don't take any notes. I do want to ask you, if I make mistakes or I've added stuff that you can add to, please either by a chat or somewhere in the future let me know. I have spent about 3 months trying to come up with a lot of this stuff in here. And as Gordy said, for 40 years I was driving back and forth on the same road and sort of never paying attention as to the history. I was driving okay. A couple of years ago, one of my friends, John, said, "Hey, have you ever noticed that bridge abutment in the S-curves?" And I said, "No. What are you talking about?" That type of thing. So one day Joe and I were driving, and we pulled over, and I got out there on the S-curve where that house is always getting hit. I think you know where it is, across from Scanlon's farm. You look across the street, there's an abutment. So then I went to a good source of information. In this case is the what they call them, the plat maps, and I We have maps from 1855, 66, 1876, and 1908. And I looked there, and son of a gun, there it is. I like, why would they have put a bridge there when less than a half a mile up is Pollard Road? So, you start adding these little facts together. And as I drove, I started adding a little bit more into my knowledge. And another thing that added a lot into my background was we have a painter in the area who's deceased, but he did over 300 works. Clarence Stratton was his name, still is his name, and he had lots of paintings of homes along the way. Maple Glen Farm and you name it. They were there. So I started looking at those through different lights. The one thing you have to realize that our area was the wilderness, and of course, if you turn, there we go. I came up with a general timeline, and really nothing that important here. This is everything you would have learned on your, well, maybe not everything, but a lot of the history stuff of New York State. And it goes from about 1700, where this area was, the wilderness, the wilds, the frontier, and the Haudenosaunee Indians were here and everybody else. The Nanticoke tribe, most of you know, wasn't originally from here. They were from Maryland. And they came up probably 50 or 70 years before we did in our area. And in 1750s to the 60s, it was the French and Indian War. You've seen all the black and white movies on the old, whatever, Cooperstown and Last of the Mohegans, stuff like that. And I'm going to jump basically to our time in history, which would have been about 1779. And in that time, we were in the middle of the war with the British. There was actually two sides to the war, the Atlantic coast, and then there was the frontier side. And we were losing the frontier side of the war. And after the Cherry Valley Massacre, and Dick, I think, could tell us a lot about that. I think you grew up in that area, Dick Shipway. After the Cherry Valley Massacre, Washington was asked to solve the problem of the Native Americans in the wilderness. So you got two generals, Sullivan and Clinton, and they basically started a campaign, nice word, to destroy the Indians in the area. That could be a whole presentation and a half on itself. But by 1779, the two armies met in the town of Union, conveniently named for a place for two armies to meet. Or is it the other way around? Stop laughing, Gordy. Lily thought that was funny too. And so they met in Union. The area is basically open. The U.S. hasn't even started yet, And in 1786, jumping the years, a company in Massachusetts was given the right to sell land. And they were called the Boston Purchase or the Boston 10 Townships. Too much talking, Phil. Let's get to something else. Okay. George Washington, president, 1789. And in about 2 or 3 years, people started traveling from New England and or Pennsylvania to come to this area to buy the land, to settle, open up the new frontier. So here we go here. If you go to the next slide, Gordy. Story of the 10 townships. If you look at the bottom center of the map, it says Tioga, Tioga, and that circle around there is where we are, from the basically Shenango, Susquehanna River out to Owego Creek, and that's the area that could be sold and was sold on it. No problems? We're good? Good. If you wanted to buy the area, I don't know where the land merchants were, but also in this area you could have bought from the land merchants in the Binghamton area, Harpersville. Different places were available to buy. And in our case, again, repeating the word, the Boston Purchase occurred. Somewhere around 12.5 cents per acre will get you started in the land. Of course, in today's world, God knows what that would be. And back then, most people didn't have the money, so they usually set up some sort of a mortgaging system where they would give them half of their trees, half of their food, half of their whatever, to buy the land. So let's switch it around a little bit. Next slide. Not really going to talk about this one. The history of Maine. This is from 1924. There have been quite a few books written of New York State where they talk a lot of the history of the area. The next slide, if we could, introduces four people I want to briefly mention during this talk. And if you can notice, the first one says arrives in 1794. Remember, the Boston Purchase was in 1786. And this is Colonel Benjamin Norton. He's 43 years of age. He fought in the Revolutionary War. He lived in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. He had, I think, 6 children. 9 children. I'm wrong on that one. I got to start reading my own notes. And he purchases lot 51. So now you're living in Massachusetts. Right now, to get to Stockbridge, you're probably talking a 5-hour drive on the interstate. Back then, it would have taken 5 months or more to get here. And of course, back then, there were no roads really. And the easiest answer to that is they would follow old Indian trails. And I guess everybody knew about them. But Indians did not have wheels. The trivia question, when did wheels reach America? And the Indians never used wheels. They basically did everything on their back or they walked. So there were no roads. I mean, wagons and stuff didn't really exist at that time. The other person is, other people in this case, is the Gates brothers, Russell and Alfred Gates. They come in 1797. Third one, which kind of interesting to me, is the Jedediah Dudley. He was 22 when he set out on his trip. He also lived in Stockbridge. So in my mind, I picture that in 1793, a teenager, Jed Dudley, was talking to his neighbor, Benjamin Norton. I'm making this stuff up, folks, so it may be true, it may not be true. But he talks to him and he says, what are you doing? He says, I'm going out to the frontier. I just have purchased some land. Why don't you come join us? Dudley wasn't married. When he traveled and he left Stockbridge, he went on his own. I believe his sister also traveled with him. And the fourth person, is the Councilman family, which is what we call the Glen Aubrey area. And he has the most amazing story, and I'll allude to it later on in there. So these are a couple of families who, from 1793 to about 1797, came here, and here was nothing. Well, actually, it was everything. That's sort of a civilized way of being stupid, I would think. We had our old-growth forests, wild animals, everything you wanted here. It was just perfect, and there were no neighbors, type of thing. So let's go to the next one. We'll come back to those nice people eventually on that. Interesting sub-fact, the thing on top says transportation. Phil Parr sent me essays that his dad, Elton Parr, wrote in 1957 for, I guess, a master's course in Cortland. And it's amazing. He had incredibly great details to fill in there. And I'm guessing it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 or 50 pages on that. So I quoted in here a lot of his stuff. And in West Corners, if you go to the CVS there, stand in West Corners, let's go to the next page, I think is where, no, I'm wrong. What was that then? Oh, I'm screwing up, folks. I want to go to the West Corners page, which is way down there.
There we go.
If you're standing in West Corners, and I screwed Gordy up, I apologize. If you stand in West Corners, fourth time I said that, in about 1803 or 4, and you're looking north towards the town of Maine, the whole area is basically just about forests. There was a toll road that started right there on the corner. That happens to be Carl Street on the left there. And the road from Endicott came up on the east side of the Nanticoke, crossed the river at Carl Street, and basically came out here. And this started the trail towards the town of Maine. In the distance, you see there's West Corners, the school back there, Linnaeus West, and the toll road was about only 5 miles long, but it made a great difference in the area. So if you're Jedediah and it's 1797 and you're 22 years of age and you reached here, there was nothing. So how did he get from here to there? Well, he followed the Indian trails, and most of them just followed along the creek. Uh, he went out about 5 miles north, set up his where he was going to live. Again, he wasn't married at that time. Uh, the Gates brothers, similar thing. 2 years later, uh, again they actually they moved to the Binghamton area first, and for some reason they didn't like the soil, and at least that's what I read, which doesn't make sense to me because Binghamton I would think would be more better soil in the ground than where we are. If you live around here, planting a garden, we don't have great soils. But they decided to move here, and again, they went about another 3 miles past where Dudley had moved to. Um, Wilderness. So what do you do? Let's go back for 1 second. I want to introduce the star of our story. Now, I'll do it on the one which shows the Nanticoke watershed. And for those who do, one more. There we go. For those of you who fish or know anything about Nanticoke Creek, the watershed is actually kind of big, but one of the smallest streams in the area. It goes 22 miles from its north part, either Lyle, the west side, or Whitney Point area. Fort Hill Golf Course as the east branch. They meet, of course, Hamlet of Maine, right near our museum, and then they join together and go down there. That little stream there, Nanticoke, was a major source uh, for power back then. So eventually, when people move in, water wheels. We had grist mills, we had water, sawmills, and everything else. At one time, I think there were 7 sawmills from Glen Aubrey to the town of Union Center, all operating in that area. So let's go on to a couple more so I can screw Gordy up totally here. We had this all rehearsed. Let's go to, okay, that's good. In the distance, when you're standing and CVS, thanks Gordy for reading my mind, up in the distance is Linnaeus West School. Now, when I moved here in whatever 1970, whatever, I always heard about West Corners, and we have a resident of West Corners next to me on my right hand here. And I asked Gordy this question, not to embarrass him, but just to see if, when he was growing up, and you can answer this out loud, Gordy, why was it called West Corners as far as you knew?
I thought it was northwest of Endicott, so, or my familiarity with Endicott. So I thought it was the western part of Endicott, but
Which is probably what everybody else considered. Of course, it's a history lesson here, and Ormond West, last name, came to the area in the early 1800s. He purchased another Boston purchase there. So West Corners, we have a town here, a little crossroads called Bowers Corners. Corners, of course, is another pseudonym for area or little village or whatever. So Ormond was West Corners. Most of you know I'm going to go to the name of the school, Linnaeus West. Well, that's his grandson. So starting in the early 1800s, Ormond, then his son Martin, basically had great farming. And that whole area really is a really good place to do farming in there. Of course, they had to clear the fields first. Linnaeus West itself was built in 1938, same time basically as J. Ralph Ingalls. Water break time. And in the 1930s, New York State wanted school districts to consolidate. Linnaeus West was on the school board. He actually worked also on the consolidation of Maine and Wells schools too. And when I say consolidation, what I'm really saying is they took the one-room schoolhouse and they basically brought them together in one location or two, and they made a centralized school. So Linnaeus West, I think Endicott may have had, I'm making this up, somewhere like, if they were similar to us, probably 21-room schoolhouses. And they put them basically in the Linnaeus West campus area. Prior to that, there was schoolhouse number 15, which is located on that same property. So there's basically was always a school there, always meaning from the 1800s in it. So let's go to the next one, see where we're heading to. I mentioned it was a toll road, so how much money would they charge you to go on it? This is a map from 1876. To the bottom is Martin West, the son of Ormond West. There's schoolhouse number 15 right on the side of the road type thing. I don't know if you can see the mouse that Gordy's wiggling in there. And then those numbers 108, 107, 106, that's the number that you would buy from the Boston Purchase. So let's take an example. Martin West had Boston Purchase lot 110. A few miles, well, actually 9/10 of a mile from the toll booth. And once you entered the toll booth, you paid the toll. In this case, it would have been like 3 cents to walk, 6 cents if you were on a horse. And then if you brought like 20 sheep, it was like 11 cents. And they had all these other numbers type thing. It was their job to maintain the road. So it's the early 1800s, the toll road started. And if we go up for a moment to 107, it's the Boswick family. That's our first stop. You notice the address is on the top of the slide, 1463. Okay, farm of Milton Boswick. It's 9/10 of a mile from the toll gate, and the house is from 1866. On the bottom, you see an aluminum covered house, aluminum siding house, light blue color. Terenzi's Auto Shop, right there. That's the original 1866 home, hidden beneath aluminum sheeting in there. And Milton, actually the son of Dan, Dan had at least 3 sons who fought in the Civil War. Milton was one of them. He actually did 2 separate times in the Civil War. When he came back in 1865, he married, took part of his father's land, and built that house in 1866 on it. He was discharged in July 6th, 1866, and immediately came back married, and the rest is sort of history in that one. If you look to the right, there's a white house right on the same road there, and that house was built in 1946 by a son of Milton. And one of our neighbors, the Singer family, is also part of the Boswick family. That's where they lived for quite a while with Grandpa Chaz at that location. So the Boswick's there. If you notice, even funnier in here, there's a brickyard shown. There's that sort of orange arrow, cough coming. Pardon me. And there was a brickyard there. And if you know that area a little bit closer to town, there's a little square pond in that area, also part of that brickyard. And I have no idea where the kilns were and stuff like that. But, we had all these so-called cottage industries along the way on it. So if we go, let's say, to the next slide, please. This shows what's behind the aluminum siding. Same house. Actually really pretty in that photo in 1909. So Milton and his 5 children, all born in that house after 1866, coming back from the war. Next slide, please. Charlie, their youngest son, who built that White House next door, as he was older, he picked up art. And the painting in the upper part is what the Nanticoke Creek would have looked in that area. It was a dairy farm, so that's probably a scene that Charlie picked up and painted on his there. Quite a talented guy. He was actually a carpenter. And he was a carpenter and house painter, house builder. While he was farming the area, he picked up a collection of nice arrowheads and paraphernalia in that area. So every house has a story. Even a blue aluminum-sided home is part of our history. Next one, please. Just north of the Boswicks, and this is a map a little bit older, 10 years older, is the Luce, Luce family. And that's kind of an interesting, that's 107 Boston Purchase. If you go to the next slide, this is where the Luce house would have been. Most of you recognize Payne Road is right there. And according to Shirley Woodard, I'm going to read it to you off the slide. She wrote in 1973, I know of only one route in Maine Township for the travel and care of slaves. This route has, as far as I have been told, its first point of contact in a home in Vestal, its next station or stop, the Luce home, what stood here in this location, on Route 26 south of Union Center, and next to the Russell Gates home. And then it continues on to Newark Valley and then Dryden and up to Ithaca. So this is one of the stops which I'm going to say is verified. I think Shirley would have done a good job there in verifying it, of that area. No evidence, as far as I know, that, from the original one there. But if we go to the next farm up, which is kind of interesting, picture in this case, the one painting we have from Stratton would have showed the highway next to it, and that upper painting shows 100 years or 150 years ago or so, where Nanticoke Gardens is. So basically you would have had farmhouse, small farm, couple hundred acres. Next one, another farmhouse, couple hundred acres. Area would have been cleared by this time in the 1820s, and on and on and on. This lot here belonged to the Moulton family, who got here in 1820s. And they came also, I believe, from Stockbridge on that one. Next one, please. Keep going. I did a genealogy whenever I could of the various families. No need to read that. So it's the Moultons. And then the next farm up is what I'm going to allude to as Annie's Wheelbarrow, which most of you know in the summertime. There's a gentleman who sells produce that he grows right next to his farm. And he's right next to the Nanticoke Gardens, next farm up. Mr. Arcangeli is the current owner. His family came here in 1920 and they bought this farm. The thing I love about this farm is up the hill, there's no trees. We had great trees in the area, all cut down, lumber sold. One of the first incomes in the region. Fields were cleared, they farmed them, and then they realized after a couple of years the grain, just basically the soil wasn't any good anymore. So they basically turned it to grazing, and grazing meant cows. So they had 30 head up to 1986 in this location. Up where the road twists and the north arrow is pointing, there's a foundation in the ground, and Sam, the current owner of it, tells me that his grandfather told him that that was a house where slaves were hidden, if that's the right word to use, along the Underground Railroad. So we know of the Luce house, perhaps his house. He said a few years ago somebody came by to do some research on it. So we were a very active area. And of course, the Gates house today is not the Russell Gates, but the Cyrus Gates house is the one we could actually go into if they allow you in there and actually see the area. Gordy, what time we got? A few more minutes?
7:32.
How much?
7:32.
Okay, so what do we got? 32, about 15 more minutes. I'll speed it up a little bit. I got my watch here too. So who's next to Annie's Wheelbarrow? I think I got another nice photo of Annie's Wheelbarrow. And you've driven by there a long time. You've looked up and you wondered, why is it still, cleared? Most of them have gone back. As a matter of fact, in 1870, to digress for a moment, the people around here started to realize that we're losing trees, the runoff, the erosion, and everything else. They started planting trees again back on the hills, which is almost ironic. But they had, as I said, a working dairy farm there for quite a while on it. Next one. Okay, this cost a lot of money to generate this slideshow, so we picked up some sponsors along the way. So I'd appreciate it if you would support our advertisers. Our first one is Niles Creamery, who offer you the best prices, and go there and buy your butter and cheese and condensed milk. Okay, the two ladies delivering theirs every day they would set up there. And if you're thinking they look like twins from the back, they were. Those are the picture twins on that one. So it's our first commercial sponsor. Please stop by Niles and pick up your fresh cream cheese. Next one, please. A view of Union Center, which in this case is a blink, but you better not blink, because if you do, you get sideswiped on Nanticoke Drive, one of the more exciting places to drive through. But back in the 1900s here, it was an incredibly active town. as Maine, New York was also. Here's a photo from 1910. Notice most of the farmland is cleared. The church is right there. Is the one church you see as you drive along 26. We're on the back side of it. Originally settled by Madel, Meldo A.L. No, I'm selling it wrong. Medad, Medad Bradley. It's right there in front of me. In around 1790, and it was called the Bradley Corners, and eventually it became Centerville, and then we now call it as Union Center, a thriving place. If we had a map to look at on that area, we'll go on more. This is what it would look like in 1866. Incredible businesses, lots of houses. North is to the top, and Nanticoke Drive, of course. Okay, Lily, you can get through there. Nanticoke Drive is right there, and of course Route 26. Again, still part of the toll road in there. Hard to believe, but you know, I think alone in that area there are about 5 or 6 mills, 2 sawmills, 3 sawmills, and a couple grain mills in there. If we jump, let's see if I'm going in the right location here. Now, I guess we'll stop there for a second. There's a few houses in the town that are obviously old, and this one's from 1880. Most of you recognize that type of home in there. That's okay, don't worry. I started. Everybody hear the thudding of the tail, please. I'll be quiet for Lily to stop thudding on that one. So this is a typical 1880 home. When people came from New England, which a lot of them did, they built homes that they were familiar with. So center staircase or center door colonials, this type of Greek revival, usually a story and a half type building, 1830s to, in this case, 1880s on that one. It was recently sold. It's right next to the firehouse in there. I'm driving Gordy nuts because I'm going off track here a little bit. Next to it is a house which most people never see. It's also on the same side, the west side of the road. The photo on the right there is the Pumley house taken this year, and not Pumley, excuse me, Bram House, whatever it is. They know what it is. And it's still there. It still looks in pretty good shape. And he was the owner of a store. There were 2 general stores in Union, one next door to that and one just across the street. Incredibly active place. Here we are in downtown Union Center, 1912, looking towards Endicott. There's a horse and carriage. Remember, the toll road ends in 1855, so this is now a free road. You notice it's not paved. So wintertime, summertime, rain time, it added a little twist to your travels on that one here. Next photos. This is, I like because there's a juxtaposition from then meaning 1910, and to today. And most of you have seen that red, funny looking building right on the corner there. And raise your hand if you know what it was. I see 6 people have recognized that. Thank you very much. That was the old Grange Hall from the early 1900s in the town. It was actually 2 stories at one time. There was a fire, and the reduced it down to 1. It was before that. It was a rake factory, and it was down by the creek. So right around 1900, the Grange bought the old rake factory. They moved it up 2 stories there, and very active community there at that time. So it's now HULSC, Holtz Motors, in there. The road veers to the left, goes up the hill, because if you went straight, which it did at that time, you notice the one wagon is going straight there. It leads basically into swampy area. So let's see where we go next. In case you don't want to drive your own buggy, please let Charlie Wakeman do it for you. He has the auto transportation company. His brand new 1910 coach will take you 3 times a day back and forth from Maine all the way downtown into Union. Okay? All weather. Enjoy it. It's safe and fast. Thank you very much. Next one. A little bit more about the Grange. And we're going to jump to that church that everybody sees that is in poor condition now. And next to that church is the Nanticoke Valley Cemetery. It's no longer a church. You know, years ago it was sold. The cemetery is actually fascinating. If you ever have an opportunity, pull in the church and there's a parking lot in the back in there. So Medad and Jedediah Dudley, they're all buried there. It's an incredibly old for us cemetery, and enjoyable. You'll see a lot of names that you recognize. Many of the names, of course, are street names. So, you know, Bradley Creek, Bradley Road, named after that family right there. If you drive along a little bit further, there's another church you have to turn off of, and I'm told that they're getting close to the major anniversary for that church. It's changed design over the years. The Episcopal Church, United Methodist Church, excuse me, and that also Boston purchased property and everything else. It's still a very active church. And that road that you turn off of Nanticoke Drive was the main road that went, believe it or not, to Berkshire. So, you know, back then people, when they needed to get somewhere, they could by roadway. What are we up to next, Gordy? Ah, the Woodward family is the house there at 2016 Union Center. You drive by, you look at it, you go, interesting. I'm not quite sure about why that carport is like that. But then if I were to tell you that that inside of that, again, siding is an 1830 home, you know, with 4x4 square wood, timbers, and everything else. Union Center was an old town, and 1830 is a long, long time ago. The Woodward family did not own it back then. The history there, the name should be familiar to many of you in the historical world because Shirley was the original or second Broome County historian, the original, I believe, Maine historian on that. And like many of our families that's moved here, a lot of them had roots from the earliest settlers. I chose the Woodward family because Gordon Woodward, on his tombstone, it says that he was part of the, I guess, children of pilgrims. It's not the word. I can't really make out what it says on top of that. But he was related to William Brewster, who came over originally on the Mayflower. So he's a son of the Mayflower. I guess that's one way of saying it. He's also son of the American Revolution. And on the same tombstone, Shirley currently lives out in Arizona, but on the tombstone there, she would be a daughter of the American Revolution. And if you walk around, there's quite a few families in this area that stem from that time in there. Let's go try to get a little bit further. Wish this was here, but it's not. This is the Carmen Mill. If you go past 38B, the next street to the right, and I think there's only one there, is where this. Okay, this is the newer one where this mill was. This was a grain mill in there. The Howard family did own this in there. There was a second, believe it or not, grain factory there, and also a third sawmill. And if we go to the next photo, I was down there a couple of days ago. This is right on Nanticoke. You go to the end of the road there, park and walk over, and that arrow points to where the dam was. And the photo on top, which is from Ann Lewis's book, History of Maine, New York, that dam was an active one, and that foundation is still there from the mill, even though it was last there in 1939. So all these active industries going on. So what happens after we leave this area? One of my favorite houses, right before the road curves, is the Mace House, and I'm referring to the name that was on there. Just a gorgeous home, again from the 1830s. We're less than 4 miles away, still part of the toll road in there. Let's go, almost at the end of the toll road. So where are we heading? About a mile up from that house. And there's two maps here. There's the 1866 map on the bottom, which shows you where the toll gate was. It doesn't show you Shadowbrook, because that won't occur till 1960. The map above is from 1960 ad where they're talking about building Shadowbrook, and the Dudley home is across the street from it. And the gentleman on the right on the horse was the original toll gate keeper. Obviously, Civil War picture. We had 190 people fight in the Civil War from the town of Maine area, which is about 11% of our male population. No, 11% of our population. It's a large number. Broome County was around 10% of our population fought in the war. And of those, 15 died during the war. And of those 15, majority of those died from illness. He was one of those who died from an illness on that. We're at the end of the toll road. Hey, in case you need to do some shopping in downtown Maine, New York, stop at the C.B. Smith Meat Market. You'll enjoy it. Produce is fresh, killed weekly. This time of year, make sure you reserve your whole hog head. Can you say that?
Whole hog head.
You did better than I did on that
right
one.
here,
There you go.
looking over his
On
shoulder.
that. So, Mr. Smith. By the way, that was right next door to the post office on that one. And Betty is probably telling her niece that she actually shopped there. Right, Betty? Next one. Back to the Dudley farm. We did a presentation on the Dudleys. And if you go to our website, you can read about it. It's about a 106-page long presentation. Fascinating family. Again, originally settled in Connecticut, one of the first members of New Haven area. They sold their farm right around the late 50s. And only one member of the family basically was there, and he just sort of retired out of it. And they decided that it would be a good place for housing development. A couple more, Gordy, and then I'll see what questions or thoughts in it. This is a view from the hill looking towards the creek, the Dudley house. The house on the left, the white-looking one, is still there today. The last barn was, I think, brought down in 1960, so a lot of acreage. And it's still, I think, pretty open in there. Let's go to the next one, which is kind of, keep going on that, forget about Jedediah, is the Curtis settlement. And it's absolutely gorgeous. If you want to go to the next slide. That's not what I meant by gorgeous, even though he's a good-looking guy. Sorry, John. Here we go. This is a Stratton painting. There's less than a minute, right? A Stratton painting and then a photograph below it, and a Betty and Leo Welsh wood painting of that same area in here. And they came in 1828. First post office was there in the Curtis settlement. This was supposed to be downtown Maine, was here. So you had Dudley, you had the Curtis family, and then I believe, I'll screw up 41 or two more times here. I think we're going to have to skip two. Then you have the cemetery. And in 1825, in the background is the Curtis farm. That's where the Maine Federated Church started, Congregational Church, back then. Even though it says it, the tombstone there says it started in 1816. And the oldest grave in that cemetery is from 1812, a little, an infant, Grove Slauson. See who's next door to the cemetery. Actually, a lot of stuff on the cemetery. Oh, I couldn't stop here. Dick, if I didn't mention this, or Sue, you'd be upset with me. This is an 1861 photo taken out of Sue's book. And when I say Sue's book, this is a real commercial. Where we go? Hey, it blocks me out. We'll show it later on without me blowing up on the basically Maine and the Nanticoke Valley. So this photo is from there, 1861. I am told by the gentlemen, by the individuals in the band, it's the second oldest band in America. And I believe, and let me know maybe today or some other time, whether or not they'll be playing in the Memorial Day parade or not. You usually see them on the float on that. What you looking for?
I'm looking for the band here. I lost them for a minute. Bear with me. Going the wrong way.
Yeah.
Can't take me anywhere.
Lily's embarrassed she left on that one. I don't think I have a band picture in there, quite honestly.
There was one actually.
Well, showing them in the
There
cemetery.
you go. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So there they are playing, and they look typical. And in that case, they would play for the people going and coming back from the war to celebrate that.
Wow.
Next to the band, next to the cemetery is the Maple Glen Farm, and again, dating back to 1800. Those pigs aren't there anymore, in case you're curious on that one. Let's do two more, and then I'll stop with them. I'll stop the talk here. Empty field. That's where I'm sitting on that. I got up. It was just cold out there, by the way. And when you go by there, there's the Welcome to Maine sign. But if you went by there from 1815 to I think it's 1900, there was a one-room schoolhouse there, which is kind of cool. The next photo, or this next slide, go back one, and the bottom shows that schoolhouse in 1900 approximately. And typical things are never lost, they're recycled. In this case here, in around 1900, they took that schoolhouse, probably at great speed, smashed it into that house and connected the two together. That was a joke, Gordy. It wasn't real.
Fusion.
Okay, it wasn't at a great speed. But so that's the original schoolhouse, which was joined to that household. So it's still there, which is kind of neat. If you go by and you're looking at that, you might wind up crashing into the White House, which is unfortunate on there. Bridge abutment. We'll do 2 words on each slide. Keep going.
That's still there today. Right?
Yeah. This is the Scanlon farm. That's the original photo of the original farmhouse. When the Scanlons bought that, Bill and Sandra Scanlon bought it, that's the house they moved into. They upgraded it, and then 2 years later it burnt down, of course. And then they added the new house there. What's interesting about that house is, well, the barn is the original barn to the left, and there's another small building next to that, which is from the original property. But most of the farmland's up the hill, because the creek is right there on it. The outhouse there. For those of you who know this, the Scanlons donated their outhouse to us. And that outhouse originally served that little shed that was next to it. One of the more popular sites in our museum. Okay. And Marine House, right on the curve. Looks like eventually some year the road will go right through their living room. It almost appears that on that.
I just see the gazebo there.
That's a well.
A
They
well,
actually
a
have
well, yeah.
3 hand-dug wells right on the property. You know, the creek is only, well, it's down probably 20 feet from where the house is.
Wow.
Yeah. So the Marine family there. This is the second to last family. This is the Pollard house. Conveniently, it was built on Pollard Hill Road. Or is it the other way around? Pollard Hill Road was named after. Oh, is that how it works? Okay. So this house here, the Pollard family, incredibly interesting one. He was an entrepreneur, one of the early settlers. He used to take logs down the Nanticoke River, slash them together, and then eventually take a raft south on the Susquehanna, go down to maybe Baltimore or some other big city, sell the logs, and then walk back. I don't know. It's these guys are just incredible. They're not super people, but they did super things, which is kind of incredible in there. He did eventually buy a farm up on Pollard Hill Road on that one. And the last house I want to stop, the next to Cashaley's gas station, is this one. And such a pretty house. It's typical in a town. They added the wraparound porch, I think in 64. No, 1990. 1990 they added the wraparound porch in there. But that belonged to a family called the ZHE, Z family. I mispronounced that, I'm sure, horribly. And as you do research on this thing, I found out that Frederick Z sold a lot of the land behind his house to the town of Maine, and that's where they had their first park, behind Holy Rosary Church. It was sort of landlocked, so they put Park Street in. And back then, Betty will tell you that there was a music stand there. There was an ice skating rink. There was a softball field. Hard to believe that we've lost so much history so quickly. And, here we are about to enter into Maine. I'm going to stop here because I'm hopefully the next talk, maybe next year, whenever time. Oh my goodness. Last commercial? You shouldn't be laughing. That could be somebody's mother, right? This is for Flint's millinery shop. Please, if you need your highest French fashions are on show there daily. Enjoy yourself. Mrs. Flint will be happy to help you with all your needs on that one. We'll shut it down before I get in trouble. Okay. I don't want to go there.
Okay.
It's Alan.
Yeah.
These people have too many commercials already. They're getting tired on that one.
More
For those of you who don't realize, Alan's funeral parlor in Endicott started here. They actually, believe it or not, started in Allentown, another one of those weird coincidences, which is just like a mile up the road on 26. They started in 1915. They moved into Endicott in 1938, moved into their current location on that. I don't know the names of the horses, though. That's the second question people always ask. Okay. So here we are back to our museum. Beautiful painting done by Jeff Yurko. Great looking thing. And I'm going to stop here. I've gone over my allotment of time. I apologize. But time does fly when you're having fun. Any questions ever come up, Gordy, or the people are
Let's
just
see if we can get the
wondering when this
chat
guy's going to
working
stop talking?
here. I don't know why my chat is disappearing here.
Oh,
Huh.
no.
Well,
I guess you got to close that down, right?
I don't know why that's doing that. Let's
The
see.
chats have gone into cyberspace on that one.
Yeah, I don't see any. It seems like the chats have stopped working. So
Okay.
I think we can open up. If you have any questions for Phil, feel free to unmute your microphone and
We'll spend a couple minutes if you have time.
answer any questions you have. I'd like to remind everybody
Great
that
presentation, Phil.
Okay, Dick. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. I should mention there's a ton of detail in there we didn't have time to go over,
No,
but we will put it on the website. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to work through the website and ask the questions, or if you have content or interesting material that you'd like
I
to,
certainly would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Things that we could
Oh,
add
there you go.
in there.
yeah,
So Carl wants to say something?
yeah. Anybody that has to comment, open up your microphone now, and we'll.
Well, I just really want to congratulate Phil. It was I really was intrigued by much of it, and I enjoyed that. And the little ads in between, especially the commercials. Good show.
You're
Good
welcome,
show,
Carl.
Phil.
So next time you drive into Endicott, maybe you'll notice some of the buildings I talked about.
Exactly.
I like seeing a lot of new people here that I don't know
In the audience,
in the
yeah.
audience. I think that's really cool.
Gordy, how many people signed up for the talk?
I think we have like about 80 people interested between the talk, or 80 interested
Yeah.
either the talk or the follow-up recording. So
Yeah.
again, we'll post this to our website and we'll post a link to it on Facebook over the next day or two.
Oh, good.
Probably just do a little cleanup and editing. And then we'll also post the presentation probably tomorrow morning.
Mr.
Or so.
Baldwin, I have one question. Can you hear me? Dick?
Dick Baldwin, I'm here. Charlie's on.
One question for you. You have
Yeah.
anything to add?
Well, I sent you a couple chat messages.
I was hoping so.
I'd love to ride up and down Route 26 with you.
I would love to have you here.
I regret when you go further north, you're soon going to turn to the right and head towards Glen Aubrey instead of Nanticoke. But maybe.
Well, the next talk I think Carla and yourself and your brother will talk about Nanticoke.
Yeah, Charlie's going to talk about Nanticoke with Carla.
Right. Where are you right now? You're
I'm
in
in Massachusetts.
Okay, that's what I thought. It's amazing how the wind blows that far out there, right? Did you see any the Dudleys walking on the way here to set up the new property on the way?
Yeah, I was gonna drive. We'll drive through Stockbridge. I suspect Stockbridge was a pretty big area at the time, kind of like Lisle included Nanticoke, Barker, Triangle, and Lisle, and I suspect Stockbridge at the time covered a bigger area than it does today.
And is it South Stockbridge? There's a relative of yours who has the, is it the vinegar store? I'm trying to think of what it is.
Yeah, he's related. They're in West Stockbridge, I guess it is.
Right.
That Charlie buys vanilla there.
Now, Dick, I learn a lot from him every time I meet, and I'd like to get in the car with you someday and
Oh, I'd love that.
add your knowledge to this talk. So thank you. Looking forward to seeing you next. Thank
There
you.
is a Isaac Lamb descendant on Route 26 at a nice house down there. Charlie could tell you the name. It was Harold Bruce Harold Lamb at one point up until I don't know when he was on that farm, but it's somewhere in that stretch by the Nanticoke Gardens. We'll have to tell you about that sometime.
Okay, I will. Thank you. You know, last time I was with him was basically a year ago. We got together talking about doing his talk, which is coming up next, from Historical Society. And, you know, always a wealth of information from yourself and from your brother. And I always enjoy, he's a nice host showing around the properties. So thanks again.
Yeah, well, you did a great job tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Gordy?
Anyone else have any questions, or feel free to open up your mic and
I think that's it. They're all still smiling, which is nice on that one.
yeah. Well, we appreciate everyone joining us tonight, and we're going to try to do. We were doing monthly programs within the museum itself pre-COVID, and we've been, we're going to probably try to tape the presentations from now on, so we preserve them. A lot of our efforts this year are going to be going into archiving presentations. As we gather new content, we'll preserve that, and we have some old content that we're putting together to put on the website. So please check out the website and look at some of the presentations that are out there. There's just, geez, I can't even fathom how many hours worth of research went in for from various people, and there's a lot of contributors to that. So, and we owe a lot of people a lot of thanks for the work they've done.
Yeah, also on Memorial Day, after the parade, we're opening up again to having Smoky Legends barbecue. The buildings will be open for tours. There'll be a new exhibit on the woodcuts of Jim Hohenstein. So hopefully the outdoor season.
Howenstein.
Excuse me, young lady. Why would you know that?
I don't know.
He was my neighbor. You're telling me I've been calling him the wrong name for years?
Well,
Yeah,
I guess he doesn't care anymore. So
In case you don't know, and I did make that mistake, not purposely.
Oh.
Sue is Jim's daughter, the proud owner of many of his wood carvings, which she'll be presenting in museum. So come get your barbecue after the parade and everything else,
the flea market.
which will be on Monday, right?
Yeah, there's also a flea
Bill,
market
Dick
there.
Baldwin
Oh,
here
I
with
forgot
one
about
more
that.
commercial.
What's that?
I've got I just noticed here a little while ago that June the 5th, there's going to be a tour of the Riverside Cemetery in Whitney Point. The town of Triangle town of Barker historian is going to lead a tour of the cemetery, 1 o'clock on June the 5th, rain date the 12th, a week later.
You have to do reservations at all that with that,
It
Dick? Or
doesn't say so. There's, I saw it on a Facebook page, All for the Love of History, Whitney Point Group.
okay, I was confused on that. What was it?
All for the Love of History at Whitney Point Historical Society, was it?
Oh, no, All for the Love of History, Whitney Point Group on Facebook.
Oh, Whitney
Oh,
Point
Oh,
Group.
okay.
I got
Also,
you.
okay, I
That's
got
why
you
I saw the
Okay.
on
post.
that one. Thank you.
Okay.
And we've got our cemetery tour coming up that Sue will be doing in August sometime.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff coming if you're into this area. And thanks all of you for visiting us tonight. And good night, everybody.